arguing amongst one another. And finally, one person says, listen, and Mu'tamid al-Allah ibn Abbad remembers how all he had to do was say the word al-Murabitin, and Alfonso VI ran away. So he tells the people, he gets up and he gives a speech. And at the end of it, you know what he says? He goes, لا أريد أن ألعن على منابر المسلمين. He's like, I don't want the day to come where I'm cursed from the minbar, because I was the one who gave away Al-Andalus. And here's how he ends it. He goes, لأن أرعى الغنم في المغرب أهون إلي من أن أرعى الخنازير في أوروبا. He goes, for me to become a shepherd in North Africa is much more beloved to me than becoming a stable boy in Europe. Meaning, either way, I have to serve another king. I would rather it be the North African king than the European king. So what do? They sent a group of people to Yusuf ibn Tashfin. And they ask him for help. And when Yusuf ibn Tashfin sees this, he doesn't say, okay, I'll help you, but I have some guidelines and I have some shurut that I want to put. No, he accepts immediately. He accepts immediately. He says, okay, absolutely, I will help you. And he rules over 1/3 of Africa. But you know what he does? He can't take his entire army, because his land, his kingdom is so large. He can't take a massive army. He has to leave an army to defend his kingdom. He only takes 7,000 soldiers. He takes 7,000 soldiers. They cross the sea into Spain, and they have to march from southern Spain all the way up north to southern France. So they have to march through all the Muslim kingdoms that are on the way. Alfonso VI hears that Yusuf has brought an army, so he puts together his own army. He puts together an army from all the neighboring Christian kingdoms. He puts together an army of 60,000 soldiers. 60,000 soldiers. And he gathers this army, and he declares, he goes, with this army, I will not only fight the humans, I will fight the jinn, and I will fight the angels in the sky. Like, he has a massive army, a very powerful army. And he says this army can take on anything and anyone. So he sets this army, and he's waiting for Yusuf ibn Tashfin. Yusuf ibn Tashfin is marching up north with 7,000 people. By the time he gets to the battlefield, his army has become 30,000. Why is that? We're talking about 80, 90 years of Muslims living in absolute disgrace in Al-Andalus. Okay, these are people who have been depressed, who have been distressed. And when they see a group of confident Muslims marching, it instills hope within them, because that's what a confident Muslim does. A confident Muslim raises their community, they raise the people around them. When I tell people that the mantra of Yaqeen is the confident Muslim, they say, why is that? And I tell them, the societal effect of the confident Muslim cannot be tallied. Because people are naturally lost. You are in a dark forest. When you see someone who has a flashlight, you're just naturally going to gravitate towards that person. So when these Muslims who have been distressed and humiliated and depressed, they see a different kind of Muslim marching through their land, they start just being filled with hope and optimism. And so these 7,000 were joined by so many people along the way that when they got to the battlefield, they became 30,000 soldiers. They became 30,000. And the two armies meet. And Yusuf ibn Tashfin writes a letter to Alfonso VI. He writes to him telling him, I heard that you kept telling people that if only you had ships, you would come meet us. Well, I'm here to tell you, you don't need any ships. I've come to you. And I'm giving you 3 options. Either you surrender, or you become Muslim, or you are a genocidal maniac and it's going to be war. Because when you read about what Alfonso VI was doing and what he did, this is a man who was a genocidal maniac. He was a murderer. So Alfonso VI reads this letter and he's furious and he goes, I choose war. And Yusuf ibn Tashfin goes, okay, done. Now, when he gets the reply from Yusuf, he starts being filled with a little bit of worry, a little bit of fear. Because when you're used to bullying weak people, when somebody stands up to you, you don't know how to react. So you know what he tells Yusuf ibn Tashfin? They met on a Thursday. He told Yusuf, he goes, tomorrow's Friday, that's a holy day for the Muslims, and we respect the holy day of Muslims. After that is Saturday, and there are Jews in both of our armies. And after that is Sunday, which is our holy day. So I think we should go to war on Monday. So Yusuf ibn Tashfin laughs because he realizes, like, what do you mean you respect the holy day of Muslims? I'm here specifically, and all of this happened because you wanted your wife to give birth in the masjid. So what are you talking about? So he gets this letter from Alfonso VI, and he doesn't show it to his generals. He just burns it because he knows he's a liar. And he knows, he's like, you know what, this guy's going to attack on a Friday. He doesn't respect any religious tradition, not even his own. So he tells his generals, he's like, prepare the army. We're going to go to war on Friday. And they're like, okay. It's a Thursday night, everyone's asleep. There's a sheikh in the battlefield who came along to talk to the soldiers, to comfort the soldiers, to answer their questions. He's sleeping and he sees the Prophet ﷺ in a dream. And he says that in the dream the Prophet ﷺ told him that you will be victorious and you will join us. You, ya sheikh, will join us. So the sheikh wakes up and he's ecstatic. And he runs to the tent of Yusuf ibn Tashfin and he tells the guards, I need to see him, I need to see him. And they're like, okay, Yusuf ibn Tashfin comes out. What's going on? I saw the Prophet ﷺ in a dream and this is what happened. Yusuf ibn Tashfin commands the generals to wake up the entire army and they all must be told the dream. And when everyone is told the dream, for the first time in 80 to 90 years, people feel a genuine sense of happiness, a genuine sense of hope. People are embracing, they're hugging, they're laughing, they're crying, out of sheer, pure happiness. And Fajr comes, and they pray Fajr, and they line up their army. Now, Yusuf ibn Tashfin has 30,000, and he's facing how many? 60,000. So he uses the tactic of Khalid ibn Walid. He splits his army in half. 15,000 here, 15,000 here. The first 15,000, now I need you to pay attention to this because this is battle tactics. You can use this when you're playing Age of Empires. The first 15,000 are going to face the main army. The second 15,000 are going to hide behind the mountain. This was the tactic that Khalid ibn Walid used against the Romans. So he says, okay, the first 15,000 are going to face the Alfonso VI army head on. The second 15,000 are going to hide behind the mountain. Now, who's the head of the 15,000 that's going to face the army? Al-Mu'tamid ala Allah ibn Abbad. He goes to Yusuf ibn Tashfin and he says, please let me redeem myself. Let me redeem myself. Let me lead the army. And Yusuf ibn Tashfin is hesitant because, listen, this is a major tactic. If you fail here, the entire battle is done. And he goes, no, please let me do it. Please let me do it. Please let me do it. He lets him do it. He's like, okay, you can lead the army. And during daybreak, Alfonso VI's army attacks. And they find the Muslims ready. And these two armies, because they're fighting in such a narrow space, it doesn't matter about numbers, these two armies clash. And it's a horrific clash. And you want to know the name of the battle? The battle is called Az-Zallaqa. You know why it's called Az-Zallaqa? It comes from the Arabic word which means slippery. The battle is called that because there was so much blood that the horses and the men would routinely slip on the battlefield. So when you mix water and dirt, you get mud. When you mix water and blood, a different kind of mud. And horses, and it was so much blood that the horses and the men would routinely slip. And these two armies clash, 15,000 facing 60,000. And they fight until Asr. They fight from daybreak until Asr. And at Asr, Yusuf ibn Tashfin gets up. And he tells the army hiding behind the mountain, he goes, we're going to split up into 3 different people. 15,000 are hiding behind the mountain. He splits them into 3 groups of 5,000, 5,000, 5,000. He tells the first group of 5,000, go and help your brothers who have been fighting since daybreak. Go and help them. The second 5,000, you are to go around the enemy's camp, and before you attack the enemy from behind, I want you to burn their tents. Why? Because if you're fighting, and all of a sudden you smell camp, usually if you're fighting, you hope that your backside is covered, right? If you're fighting and you smell smoke from behind you, panic starts to ensue. And when one person panics in a crowd, everybody panics. It spreads like a disease. So he tells the first 5,000, go and help your brothers. The second 5,000, attack from the rear. But before you attack, burn the tents. And they do that. And Alfonso VI's army starts to fall apart. Absolutely falls apart. Like I said, when one person panics, everybody panics. There's just no way to help. There's no way to stop it. it spreads like a plague. And the army starts to fall apart. And Alfonso VI is defeated. Absolutely defeated. Yusuf ibn Tashfin, the last 5,000 that he has saved, are the elite forces of the Murabitin. They are the best of the best. They are soldiers who are described as having very long spears. They're soldiers from Sudan. They're described as having very long spears and large Indian swords. So you see these large men with these large swords and long spears. He tells these 5,000, you guys rush into the battlefield, pick off whoever's left. And it's an astounding victory. Alfonso VI walks in with an army of 60,000. How many people walked away? Did he lose half his army? Did he lose 1/3 of his army? 3/4? Out of the 60,000, 450 survived. Out of the 60,000, 450 survived. And out of those 450, one of them was Alfonso VI, and he only had one leg. He lost his leg in battle. And as they're retreating back to southern France, 350 soldiers died on the way from their wounds. So you have 60,000 people leave. And I want you to imagine, 60,000 soldiers leave and only 100 return. 450 survived the battlefield, 350 died on the way from their wounds. And it is an astounding victory. Yusuf ibn Tashfin, the leader of this army, the leader of this victory, when you win a battle, you collect the spoils. You're entitled to the spoils. Yusuf ibn Tashfin says, I don't want any of this. You guys can keep it. I'm going to go back down to Mauritania. And it sort of embodies what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described the rhetoric of people in Surah Ibn Sam. لا نريد منكم جزاء ولا شكورا. We don't want anything from you. We did this for the sake of Allah. And he goes back down south. After he leaves, the 22 kings go back to their old ways. The 22 kings go back to their old ways of fighting amongst one another, warring amongst one another. However, this time, the citizens, their citizens, were like, no. We just went through something horrific, and we just saw what a confident Muslim looks like. You guys are not fit to be leaders. So they sent letters to Yusuf ibn Tashfin saying, come up here, kick these 22 kings out, and we want you to add Al-Andalus to the North African Empire. And these are the citizens who are saying that. Yusuf ibn Tashfin gets this letter and he goes, no. He's like, no, repulsed. He's like, I can't go fight Muslims. Muslims fight Muslims. I can't do that. He changes his mind when he gets a fatwa from an imam who tells him, yes, you need to do that. You know who that imam was? Imam al-Ghazali. Sends him a letter saying, yes, you need to free these people from the rulers, these tyrants who have oppressed their people. So Yusuf ibn Tashfin, 1 year after his victory at Az-Zallaqa, marches at the head of an army and goes to Spain, to Muslim Spain. He goes to Al-Andalus. And he is met with a Muslim army who's going to fight him. You know who at the head of the Muslim army was? Al-Mu'tamid ala Allah. When the dunya gets a hold of your heart, it's very, very hard to let go. It is extremely hard to let go. Al-Mu'tamid ala Allah, who refused to let Alfonso VI's wife give birth, who begged to be at the head of the army. Being at the head of the army isn't something like you could be killed. When things went back to the way they were, the dunya overcame his heart once more. That's why we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from this love, because it's a very, very toxic kind of love. He leads the army against Yusuf ibn Tashfin, but at the same time, confident Muslim, and an army of non-confident soldiers, where's the match? There's no match. Yusuf ibn Tashfin wins, and he adds Al-Andalus to his kingdom. He adds Al-Andalus to his kingdom. And as a king, it is written that he ate his food was basic, his clothing was basic, his living arrangement was basic. Because yes, he was a king over 1/3 of Africa, but you know what? He didn't think of himself as a king. He goes, I am not a king, I am a slave. A slave to who? A slave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he lived for another 22 years. You know how old Yusuf ibn Tashfin was during the battle? 79 years old. He was a 79-year-old man during this battle. And a lot of the rhetoric usually revolves around the youth and the impact of the youth and the influence of the youth. But one thing that I feel like people seem to overlook is the importance of elders and eldership. Because I want to tell you something, and please forgive me if I insult anyone, but there is no retirement age in Islam. Yusuf ibn Tasfin was 79 years old. 79. I was once with an imam who told me a story. And he said, his father was a 50-year-old man. His father is telling the story. He goes, I was 50 years old. And I was, thinking to myself, I'd like to study Islam. I'd like to get a degree in Islam. But then he's like, yeah, I'm 50. I should have done this when I was 20. Forget it. 5 years later, he's 55. And he goes, man, I could have gotten a bachelor's degree in Islam by now. If I actually did it back when I said I was going to do it, and I was 50 years old. And whatever, I'm 55. And another 5 years pass by, and he's 60. And he goes, I could have had 2 degrees. Whatever, I'm 60. And he does this until he's 70 years old. He hits 70 years old, and he tells his son, he goes, had I applied myself when I was 50, I would have 20 years worth of scholarship studying in Islam. And you know what he did? He didn't say, Khalas, I'm 70. No, he started at the age of 70. And now he's 75. I know the uncle. He's 75 years old and he has a bachelor's degree in Islamic studies. Muslims, whether young or old, there's never a period where we say it's too late. The concept that we as Muslims don't need to apply ourselves because what's the point doesn't exist in our religion. I just told you a story of a confident Muslim and the effect that one confident Muslim has. We've reached the end of the story. And you know what we say at the end of the story? May Allah have mercy on Shaykh Abdullah ibn Yaqeen. May Allah have mercy on Shaykh Abu Bakr ibn Umar. May Allah have mercy on Shaykh Yusuf ibn Tasfin. These are confident Muslims. These are confident Muslims, and you see the effect that they have on their communities and their societies. So I'm going to end with this. I'm here from Yaqeen Institute. And I'm not here to ask anyone for their money, I'm here to ask you for your time. Now, what's the philosophy of Yaqeen Institute? I'm going to explain to you in 90 seconds. Yaqeen Institute, we believe that Islamophobia, the target of Islamophobia, is not non-Muslims. It's not non-Muslims at all, it's Muslims. Why? I'll tell you why. Because if a non-Muslim in the middle of Florida, or in the middle of Wyoming, or in the middle of Arkansas, reads all of this Islamophobic material and they start to hate Islam, it usually stops there. But when a Muslim who has doubts in their religion, who has questions that are unanswered in their religion, they start to ingest all of this material and they leave Islam, you know what happens? They're given book deals, they're given speaking podiums, they're invited to universities, they're invited to CNN and Fox News to talk about Islam. So, when we talk about what Yaqeen does, what Yaqeen's goal is, we want to build a system. And we have, alhamdulillah, built a system where somebody who has doubts in their religion enters in one end and comes out in the other end as a confident Muslim. Because the societal effect of the confident Muslim cannot be tallied. And so I'm here to ask you to read the material of Yaqeen. It's 100% free. It's completely free. It's available online. We have articles talking about the age of Aisha. We have a paper on the rights of minorities under Muslim rule. We have a paper on the issue of slavery in Islam. All of these questions that people usually have unanswered and they have doubts in their faith, we have taken liberty to address those. But you know what? What good is any of this material if no one reads it? What good is any of this material if no one reads it? That's why I usually go and I tell people, listen, this exists. And it's okay if you have doubts. Our religion is not afraid of doubts. Our religion is not afraid of questions. Because we know they can be addressed. The only issue we've had until now is getting all of these answers into one area where people can go. A one-stop shop for all. So, when you walk away out of here, I just spoke about the issue of confident Muslims and I spoke about the battlefield. Real battles, in terms of physical battles, are very rare nowadays. Right now, the battlefield is the intellectual battlefield. It's the intellectual battlefield. People are influenced now by ideas more than ever. They are radicalized by ideas. They are made better people by ideas. They are made worse people by ideas. And we believe Islam and the true teachings of Islam are so empowering that a confident Muslim who is eloquent, who is informed, can have untold benefits on those around them. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from those people. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to instill confidence of our religion within us. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to benefit others through us, so that we may have it in our good deeds. Jazakumullah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'll take questions afterwards, just not here. If you have any questions, we can speak one-on-one, inshallah.
Yes, you know what happened to his family. He took him all the way, there, he died.
Come on, wake up. The lecture is